This is Waves, a podcast from APTA Michigan. I'm Andy Wicks with Catherine Klein. The American Physical Therapy Association represents over 100,000 clinicians and students in the United States. Every state chapter, academy, and section are run by those members, who all serve in volunteer roles. The members and their activity are what make the APTA function. We spoke today with Brian Gilbert, the current president of APTA Michigan and physical therapist, about what the chapter is doing to advocate for its members in the profession, and a charge to find a way, big or small, to get involved.
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, Brian Gilbert. I'm a physical therapist. I've been practicing since 2001. I am a graduate of Grand Valley State University. And, well, let's see. A number of things, I guess, to introduce myself. I've been working in private practice since 2001. I've actually been to the same organization since I graduated the Center for Physical Rehabilitation. We're in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but we've expanded. We have Holland and Lansing with some offices as well. And from there, I've done a number of things outside of just the practice side of therapy. I've served as the chair of the licensing board for the state of Michigan, served as Western District chair and vice chair for APTA Michigan. I'm currently APTA Michigan's president. I've served as the vice president, House of Delegates. I've been able to serve and give back to our profession in a lot of ways. So I enjoy that aspect, and I truly enjoy that. I'm a business owner. I'm a partner in our practice. I became a partner in 2013 and helped our company grow and do a number of things in that realm.
Well, and I will say, full disclosure, I have been a patient at Center for Physical Rehabilitation, and they did a great job.
Awesome. Who'd you work with?
It was at what was the clinic on Gazan. You guys moved.
Yeah. Probably with Mindy or...
It was Mindy.
All right.
And I got connected with Mindy because I worked with one of her clients.
Okay.
Anyway, random story.
Sure.
Yeah, Mindy was... And it's always weird. I'm a PT. We're all PTs here. But I'm a neuro-based PT. So when a neuro-based PT hurts his back, it's like, well, shoot, what do I do now? Yes, I learned all that stuff in school. Realistically, I haven't really done that for quite a long time. So it's nice to go to people who actually know it. Mindy and I had a nice little back and forth about, she could do a low back eval just like that. And I was commenting on it, and she's like, well, you can do a neuro screen just like that. And I can't, it goes both.
It does. And I'm always thankful that there's people that want to do inpatient, and I'm thankful that there's the people that want to do the pediatrics and the acute care. And, we can't all do it all. So what I love about our profession is we have a wide breadth of people interested in a number of things.
You've touched on a couple of things that I thought we could spend some time on. So you mentioned you are the current president of APTA Michigan, the wearer of the crown on the throne.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but
yeah.
Sure.
The person who gets blamed when things go bad.
Of course.
The current president and a private practice owner. On this podcast, we haven't had a lot of private practice owners and practitioners, and I would love to get a little bit more on that side, because I know even just working with you, we're both heading to House of Delegates very soon. Reimbursement, payment, these sorts of things are always on the docket, or on the buzzwords in people's lips. And so I would like to hear from you with your background, both professionally and within APTA Michigan. How do you see the landscape of private practice these days? Where's it going?
Well, the land of the private practice aspect, first and foremost, I mean, it's not going away. I think that's one of the challenges that we oftentimes face in the private practice world is exactly what you're talking about, is the reimbursement side of things. And what I'm going to probably touch on here is not meant to be offensive in any way, shape, or form, but when individuals work in the realm of hospital-based, whatever that might be, if you're working in a physician-owned, even school systems, a number of different variations of things, what you don't realize is the cost of doing business within a hospital system, for instance, bundled payments, the concept of how reimbursement occurs, it's not in your face as much. And so what ends up happening is we have a chunk of our profession that says, yeah, payment, okay.
Like, it doesn't affect me that much. Yeah.
I get my check. It doesn't affect me directly. And so can function and I can kind of continue on in my life without this urgency. And part of that happens because the margin on MRIs, surgery, patient stays, all those pieces that basically cover the loss, perhaps, of what we aren't capturing in the rehab setting, and that's including all of the PT, speech, etc. That it gets wrapped and bundled into all of it, and so it's not as in your face. Well, in a private practice world, what ends up happening is we don't have those other aspects to basically bolster the bottom line. And so we function off of our reimbursement. And when we continue to see year after year, and CMS just released their final, or not their final rule, but the proposal for the year, and it's looking like another 2-point-something% cut. It's been cut after cut for the last 5 to 8 years. At the same time, inflation is going up. So businesses are being challenged on the aspect of how do you provide optimal care? How do you continue to do what's right for the patient sitting in front of you? But how do you pay your employees? How do you challenge and create other environments that are more maybe enjoyable and fun for an employee to work as compared to maybe a hospital system if that's not their space? And so we compete more oftentimes on the aspect of the culture that we provide, not necessarily, and we pay, obviously we do personally, but I believe that most private practices are paying very fair and on par with what's happening in other arenas as well. But it isn't an apples to apples conversation. That's for certain.
Yeah, I would agree. When I worked in the clinic, it was for a nonprofit that I had productivity standards, and we had the biggest change was when auto no-fault legislation was kind of dismantled. That really affected our payment structure. But beyond that, it was bundled care, all those kinds of things. So it was never really at the forefront for me. And I would agree, anytime you're in an inpatient setting, it's just not something on your mind. So it is hard, I think, for people who aren't faced with it to go, well, what's the big deal? Or why is it such a big deal? But you just explained it very well that you're trying to squeeze more juice out of a lemon that's smaller and smaller.
Yeah. And the irony is, Mike Shoemaker and I have worked really closely over many years. When he was president, I was chair of the licensing board, and so he and I collaborated really well. And at this point, he's still very active on our legislative and payment side of the association while I'm sitting in the seat. Over the last year in the direct access bill conversation with what we're doing, he and I have had an opportunity to sit and meet with Blue Cross Blue Shield, MSMS, a number of different organizations, and actually talk through some of the scenarios of our direct access bill. We have data to provide and support across the board the cost savings across the healthcare continuum, that if you access physical therapy first, how significant we are in the healthcare arena. But it's a political game. I hate to say it. And, and that's the one piece, and I'll put the APTA hat on. That's the one thing I think that so many people in our profession, and whether this is part of the education side of things, when I was in school back in, 99 to 2001, this wasn't very well talked about. So I came out really not knowing this stuff. And I've been working with Grand Valley specifically, as well as a few of the other organizations, trying to help educate students on what happens actually at the legislative level, et cetera. But so much of what occurs is slow. It's a game. And unless you're sitting in that room having the conversation, you don't oftentimes recognize how long it takes for the PT Compact Bill just to get to the Senate or to the House Health Policy Committee to start. Our direct access bill was introduced in October of last year, and we still haven't had it heard. And it's purely
That's just the way the government works.
It's the way government works. And people oftentimes look at APTA across the board and they're saying, well, you aren't doing enough. You're not doing anything. I do struggle with that. And I'm the guy out there saying, well, if you feel you could do it better, please let's come get involved. I mean, if you look at our slate of candidates running for election this year, there's only House of Delegates that have any competition. Everybody else is basically a shoo-in. It's unopposed. I don't want that. I want opposition. We are better if we actually have more people stepping up to help volunteer and run our profession. And then we can see where we can maybe take things.
Yeah.
That's actually a plug for the last day to vote, I think, is actually today in the elections.
It is today.
Unfortunately, by
Yeah,
the
it
time this
won't
episode
be.
comes out, that'll be long there.
We don't have that quick of a turnaround.
So we can, on this episode, then we can shame
Yeah.
you for not voting.
Not voting. I voted.
Yeah. Good job.
I'm voting
Catherine.
right
Thank
after this.
Well done.
You know,
We need to get a little, or APTA Michigan, I voted.
We could.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll make the difference. That'll help get the push.
That's streaming. It's
It's-
swag. That's the
it's
difference.
all
People just
it's all
want
about the
a
sticker.
freebie. Catherine, I'm curious. You work in private practice, and especially now you
Yeah.
have your own practice. What has it been like? How was this from your side of things? I'm curious.
There are a couple things that we were kind of touching on earlier that relate to reimbursement that I think like have cascading effects within other areas of our profession too, because I think sometimes and there's a lot of competing forces at play for this, and I think ultimately people are just trying to keep their businesses afloat and serve the community the best way that they can. But I think sometimes as reimbursement has declined, there's been more of a pressure to see more patients in a day or multiple patients at once, which then I think at times contributes to people, particularly in the outpatient arena, feeling burnt out or possibly some like decline in the quality of care in our profession. And I wonder if you had any thoughts on that, Brian.
So ironically, I was back in 2017, I think it was. I started working with Federation of State Boards of Physical Therapy on their continuing competence committee. I was involved in a group there, and we were working on the concept of the burnout. And there was an interesting research study that kind of started, or it was part of this conversation, that was asking about, does continuing education by itself have any impact on fraudulent behavior? Does it minimize fraudulent behavior? So as a board, as a licensing board, you're looking for the individuals who have done something wrong. They've harmed somebody. They're billing inappropriately for financial gain, et cetera. And what it showed was there's no connection. So requiring continuing education courses, number of credits per year, et cetera, has no impact on fraudulent behavior.
Okay.
So then you step back and you start asking, well, what is it? Why do we end up in these places? And it turns into a conversation, and we ended up building, and I think it's still I haven't been on that committee since 2020, but it's turned into, and it's growing into basically a questionnaire, if you will, or a way to kind of give resources to individuals to say, where are you on this continuum, on this spectrum of burnout? And it comes down to my personal factors and my employer factors. Oftentimes, in my opinion, what I observed in this conversation when I was on these different meetings on the committee, so much of our society is, and I'm going to say it loosely this way, but not taking responsibility of the fact that I have a role in my own burnout, right? If I completely put it on my employer, and I'm working for an employer that's saying more, push, more, and I don't care about you as an individual, I have the right to leave. I can go work somewhere else, but we don't. So we end up seeing people turn into the burnout realm because they aren't taking the personal responsibility side of it. Now, I know there's a lot of factors that go into that, and that's a bigger conversation than probably what we have time for on this today. And I haven't read up on it, so I'm not going to fully speak to the research and where it sits now. But the one thing that I typically teach and push within our organization, Andy, I think you've heard me speak on this with our House of Delegates meeting. We have to continue to encourage people to have a voice for themselves. Realize that I have a role to play. I can push back. I can leave. There's plenty of opportunities out there, given the fact that we have different organizations, different private practices, different hospitals. They exist all over the country. And so to say that I'm trapped and I have to do this thing that's going to put me at risk or put a patient at risk, I think that's where the challenge actually sits, is more helping people to realize you have a voice in this as well, and we need to empower you to stand up and take a stand.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
I said, Catherine, we can do what Catherine did and just start her own business.
Yeah. So one of the things, I'll throw this in here real quick, because, I said to Catherine the other day when we were talking, one of the things that I struggle with in our profession is we fight with amongst ourselves.
We eat our own.
We eat our own. we come out of school and I work for this organization, you work for this organization. And I've been doing this. This is my 20, I've been out 23 years in my 24th year. And I've seen this happen countless times where a PT will bash another PT or another organization. I'm a believer. I'll do what I do. You do what you do. If we look at the data on how many people are actually accessing physical therapy in this country who could benefit from it. Back in 2019, there was a study that was reported at FSBPT by a guy giving a talk, and it was 10 to 12% of the population that could benefit from physical therapy services in the country were actually accessing it. So what does that sound like? That doesn't sound like we should bash each other. That sounds like there's enough opportunity out there. And if we all came together and helped people realize what we did and how we treat and what we have as far as an impact on the entire system, we have plenty of people out there for everybody. We'd be opening more clinics. We'd be doing, it's just opportunity sitting in front of us. But instead, we come out and we fight amongst ourselves. So one of my missions, and one of the reasons why I wanted to step into the realm of, the president role, is I want to help bring that together. As I said that to Catherine, I was like, she's in the Grand Rapids area. I'm a private practice owner in the Grand Rapids area. She's got a unique niche where I asked her, I said, give me some of your cards. If we don't have the ability to see some of these individuals, I'm going to send them to you. I'd rather support you than fight with you. There's no reason and no room for that.
Yeah.
Get louder for the folks in the
I
back.
really appreciated that. I mean, that means a lot to me. And well, I have a personal connection to the Center for Physical Rehabilitation too. And actually I don't think I told you this the other day, but that was where I did my first shadowing when I was an undergrad, still like deciding if I wanted to
Wow.
go into PT school.
Full
So,
circle.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Who'd you shadow?
oh, I think so. It was at the Cascade location, and there were a couple people that I was kind of bopping around with throughout the day. But one of their names was Nick, probably. Yeah.
Nick Platko.
Yep.
Hey, Nick Lefko, yeah.
Yep. And Nick is a adjunct over at Grand Valley. Yep. And so
Yeah.
that's great.
It's
I'm glad
interesting
we could have been part of your
Yeah,
journey.
definitely.
Cool. It's interesting that population of people who could benefit from PT and don't.
Oh,
So
I was going to say, there was something else I was going to say, and that's my plug for pelvic health is I feel like almost all the time when I'm talking to, whether it's like a friend or a family member, and what I do comes up, there has never been an instance where someone's been like, oh, I don't know anyone with that problem. So like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, they're always extremely interested. And then I get to hear about either them or their husband or their wife or their daughter or somebody that is having issues like that. So it's the potential
How many times do you hear, oh, I didn't know
all the
PTs
time.
did that?
all the time.
So that's my other piece of this that I think, and this is partly on the association, but I think as far as a general profession, one of the areas that I would love to see us improve on is helping society understand what we actually do. I always use the example of, I'm going to go to a dentist. You're pretty much guaranteed you know what the dentist is doing, right? You're going to chiro. You pretty much know what chiro is going to be doing with you. In most every other profession, that kind of fits. But when it comes to PT, countless people, and again, even people that I've worked with in the past who might be coming back for something else, I didn't know PTs did that. I didn't know you could help with this. We aren't good at helping society understand what we do. And we've been around for 100 years.
I think part of it is a lot of us don't understand ourselves.
We do so
Correct.
many
The
different
depth
things,
and
I
breadth
think,
of-
is part of that.
Yeah, I'll toss this out there, and I'm curious to hear your reaction, because not that it's almost like the medical model in that you say, I'm going to the doctor, okay, you are sick, you are something, the doctor's going to get better. But if you say something like, I'm going to a nephrologist, maybe some people might know what that's for, some people might not. There's so many different specialties within medicine. And are we getting to that point? Are physios getting to that point where, yes, we are all physical therapists, we all do different things? Have we specialized ourselves into a problem? I don't know. I'm not sure I don't even know the answer to my own question.
I think from a schooling aspect, one of the challenges is, and I know why it exists the way that it exists, but you have, again, you're coming from the neuro-based, I'm coming from the ortho-based. You have two very distinct, really differences. What a lot of people don't realize, in my opinion, is much ortho is very neuro-based. We tend to eliminate the brain out of that conversation, but it exists in every person that we see. One, from a psychological aspect; two, from how our body processes pain, how our brain processes pain. And so I think the specialization is, there's a uniqueness in that aspect and a passion within that aspect on the treating side, rather than being it. But you still have your generalists, right? You have your people who treat, whatever walks through the door. So I do think we're in an interesting phase of what that could look like. But if I really kind of step back to it, the amount of people that we could benefit across the board still is so significant that maybe that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I've yet to work with a neuro patient who doesn't have a musculoskeletal system.
Yeah.
Right. It's the human body. If I were to put it in maybe a slightly different context, one of the things that I've played around with and trying to think this through myself is, what do we all do? I mean, if you really, really think about this, and this is where I got to, you come out of school oftentimes, and I'm not certain where the education sits in this, but I think it's so similar. We talk about treating a tendinosis. Okay, so do we really treat a tendinosis, or do we treat the movement pattern within it and the loading structures within it? We act as though the disc moves independently in a spine away from any joint, muscle, fascia, ligamentous, etc. When I flex anything, when I move anything, everything moves. So why do we get so hung up on this minute detail of those pieces? I think if we really were to shift how we sell ourselves or help people understand what we do, it would be shifting to, what do we treat? What do we actually do? We treat movement.
Yep.
It can be delivered in a number of ways. And so how you package it, how you do it, that's where the uniqueness comes into play. That's where, if you really step into the realm of, who do I want to go see? Who do I connect with the best? Who provides the most efficient care? Those kinds of things.
I think from an education side, I see the challenge of being able to educate the students to know the pathology behind the movement disorder, but not losing the forest for the trees. You need to know what's going on there as the clinician, as the practicing clinician. I need to know what is this facet joint is specifically not moving the way it needs to, but I need to be able to see it in the bigger scheme of things to recognize how it's affecting the patient function. We were all students. I remember getting to know this minutia because we have a test on it. And I think we get hung up on that. And I don't think we do a great job at years that kind of helping pull it back to that 30,000 foot view. And maybe that's the role of the clinical instructors to a degree, but I don't want to pass the buck, me being an educator. Like, I feel like I need to make sure that, this is important, but this is important too.
Well, and
All
thinking about what aligns us all across specialties, I think the other, outside of movement, I think the other thing is just the framework for how we think about and view function and participation in life. I mean, there's the assess and figure out what the impairments are, connect that to the person's like short-term and long-term goals and how they're functioning and how they want to participate in their life. I think just that framework is, or should be, hopefully meaningful for the patient. And I think something, relatively unique that we deliver. So
salience, students, about salience.
Yeah, no, great.
Brian, do you want to touch on House of Delegates quickly?
Yeah, we leave in 3 days?
Plug for our previous episode on the House of Delegates too. Go to the back catalog.
You have interviewed, go to the archives and learn more about House of Delegates. Yes, Brian and I are two of the APTA Michigan delegation heading there. And
so that's a broad question. What do you want me to talk on with that?
I don't know. I'll say that I've never gone. This is going to be my first time.
Okay.
So tell me as a rookie, what should I be?
Well, the irony in that, my rookie year was 2020. So COVID, everything was virtual. And so it was a very, very different experience. I didn't truly appreciate House of Delegates until the following year. The first year I was kind of sitting in my chair in my, office at home, like, what am I doing here? And you're still voting, but the conversation, the debate, it was very different. So it didn't have the same impact. So yeah, in general, I mean, House of Delegates, you've got 460, something like that, 450, 60, delegates representing chapters. You're representing specialties, the private practice group, the ortho, the peds, the geriatrics, et cetera, et cetera. There's a student representation, PTA representation. And essentially what House of Delegates is doing is, if you think about the concept of government, you've got your legislative, judicial, and presidential branch. It's kind of the similar concept from an association side of how you can run an organization and association. So you've got your board of directors for APTA and House of Delegates. House of Delegates kind of helps point the board of directors where we want the association to go, where we want the profession to go. And so we get into this room, and there's a lot of work that happens throughout the year prior to this through a number of different aspects. Virtual meetings with people across the country. There are online types of things that we can read up on what people are saying, what they're proposing, but it's different things that are proposing basically charges to the APTA that, hey, we want to do this thing. And one of the big ones that I wanted to see and see more aggressively is on the realm of payment and creating a little bit more of an aggressive approach on payment. It's one of those things that when you get to the House of Delegates, it's an interesting conversation because of the distribution of the delegates. You have a small population of private practice owners. You've got a large population of academics and a large population of hospital-based. So the private practice is trying to push on this aspect of we need to get our association moving towards a better payment structure and fighting for our payment in a more aggressive way or more effective way. And it kind of gets squashed a bit. It doesn't
All
have...
of them deaf ears, no.
It falls on deaf ears. And I can even speak to this. It was last year, the year prior. There was somebody who got up and said, I don't understand why we're actually fighting this so aggressively. We are all getting paid very well, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody asked the question, where do you work? And it was a hospital system. So to no fault of anybody in any organization, it's just we have to be respectful of the different challenges that the different roles of our profession play. And so if we come together and listen more, listen better, which I think is a common statement across society as a whole right now anyway.
Yeah.
I think if we did that better, we would understand how significant that is within the whole realm of the ability to practice PT. So
I'm going to interrupt you real quick because I was just looking through the demographics report for the House of Delegates. I am definitely part of the problem because, as you were saying, the vast majority of delegates come from the realm of academia. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. Isn't the majority of APTA members in the private practice or outpatient ortho world?
yes.
So we have this huge mismatch in terms of membership representation and House of Delegate representation. So here's another plug. If you work in outpatient ortho, get involved.
Well, this has actually been one of the shticks that I put out there this last year. And by no means is this meant to be negative towards anybody who has served. I believe that if you've served within our profession, volunteered your time, I want to hit on that key, and I put that in shorelines. Everybody that works within the APTA Michigan is a non-paid position, except for our executive director, who does a lot of the legwork, the day-to-day type stuff, logistical type things. Ed Mathis, our former president, does a great job with all those things. Jake Jakubiak, Kozak, Mike Shoemaker, Susan Talley. We've had countless people who have served as far as the president side of things. But I've been practicing 23 years, and I don't think there's ever been somebody in outpatient orthopedics private practice and an owner who's ever actually sat in this seat for our state, at least. And that was pretty significant to me when I started getting involved in some of these conversations. And that's not meant to be, again, negative towards anybody who has served. Thank you for your service, because without the people who have, we'd be struggling. But we need to get a bigger voice in the outpatient realm. I have a couple of friends who I went to PT school with. They have been business owners themselves, and they made a comment to me about, I just don't have time to do this. Who does? I'll be honest. It's one of the things that I struggle with, that we all make choices on where we want to spend our time. I believe that
We are
I've been
recording
blessed.
at 7:30 in the
Yeah.
morning, so
Yeah. I believe that I've been very blessed by this profession and what I've been able to do in my career. I want to try to be a blessing to others in that aspect and give back. I've never once asked for recoup of money, time, etc. It drives my wife crazy, but she knows how passionate I am, but she's sacrificing at the same time, because I'm getting on a plane on Friday and I've got meetings Monday through Tuesday, and I fly back late on Tuesday night for House of Delegates, and I've got meetings in the front and back end of the House of Delegates as well. So I'm not complaining by any means, because I enjoy it and I believe that it's my opportunity to give back. I wish I would see more people do that.
that's
And
the
I'll say this lastly, and I'm going to say this as respectfully as possible. And I've been told I'm too blunt, but forgive me for this, but not make excuses why you're not doing it. I believe there's seasons of life, totally accept that. And maybe this isn't the right season, but within our entire careers, 30, 40 years, whatever it might be, I believe everybody has an opportunity within 30 to 40 years to give back at some point.
I think that what might put off some people from getting involved is the thought of, if I'm going to get involved, oh no, they're going to ask me to be president and now I'm running the show. No. Like, you can get involved at any, I feel like I'm asking for donation. You can donate at any level. Like, you can get involved at a committee that meets maybe 3 times a year. It's like the
Correct.
time commitment doesn't need to be huge. You can get involved as much or as little as you want. And that's kind of how I got started doing this. And it's find your area that kind of interests you. There's needs everywhere.
Yeah.
Any committee would be happy to have.
Exactly. So within that conversation, we've obviously touched on the aspect of the payment side, and there is a payment committee within the state of Michigan. We're working on a number of things there, but unfortunately, again, the other piece I don't think a lot of people understand is, from a business side, as a business owner, there's oftentimes conversations occurring behind the scenes that you really can't talk about until it's either signed on the dotted line or we have an agreement. And so, again, that vision of, well, nothing's going on, nothing's happening. There are countless meetings occurring behind the scenes, and we just can't be out in the wide open about it, because it could kill a conversation.
Well, maybe we'll take some ownership of that, because Catherine and I both technically sit on the communications committee by right of being on.
Yeah.
Maybe the communications committee could work on helping to get some messages out to the public to assure them that, yes, things are happening. You can talk about that.
No, and that's actually, ironically, that is something I've tried to work with Ed and Chris Hausbeck on, is how we can be more efficient in that. But again, everybody's volunteers, so there is a piece of that it's like, well, what's my capacity within my day-to-day job and whatnot. So there's a lot of So again, I'm a believer, many hands makes light work, not to use the old adage, but if we had more people stepping up and just helping, there's ways to do this stuff. So actually, you mentioned about asking for donations. I'll do the plug right now. So Political Action Committee, I'm going to give a quick education on this, and whether, depending on how far reaching this podcast goes, I'm not entirely sure, but from the perspective, if you're not actively donating to your Political Action Committee, the Political Action Committee is for any state and any really organization, is an association's ability to basically fund connections to legislators. If we have a legislator, and let's just use Representative Julie Rogers out of Kalamazoo area. She is a physical therapist. She is the chair of the Health Policy Committee for the House of Representatives for the state of Michigan. She is an amazing advocate for our association and for our profession, I should say. If she's doing a fundraising lunch or breakfast or whatever it might be, we can't just walk in and talk to her. You have to pay a check to donate towards her legislative fund or whatever. I forget the verbiage, but those things don't happen just because we show up. We have to basically pay for attendance. That's how this works. It's how it's played. And again, regardless of what people understand, there's a lot behind the scenes that if we don't have that money, we can't go shake the hands. We can't go have that one-on-one time. It's an opportunity to sit down with different legislators who are champions of physical therapy, or if they're on the fence with physical therapy in our goals, we want to be able to have access to them. So a quick just educational background. Our association, our political action dollars, on average sit around $12,000 to $15,000 in the state of Michigan. We, I believe, are at $16,000 right now. As a comparison, and I'm going to put this in terms of number of licensees in the state of Michigan.
Okay.
Number of physical therapists and physical therapist assistants in the state of Michigan that are licensed is around 14,000, last I had checked, give or take.
Okay.
Number of chiropractors within the state, I want to say is around 2,000 to 3,000 licensed.
Okay. Okay.
Their political action dollars sit around $50,000 to $60,000 year over year.
That math, deep math, and
I'm gonna speak on this. We did a challenge to our company last year. We were like, hey, between the owners, we were going to match whatever our staff was able to raise. And roughly about half the dollars that are sitting in the political action committee over the last year has come from our organization.
Wow.
wow. All right.
I'm saying that to challenge everybody.
Maybe we need a little scoreboard.
Yeah.
Andy, maybe we should see how much waves can generate. Is there a way that we can put the link to the...
Oh, wave nerd. Huh.
Let's figure out a way to do it, guys.
I'll put a link in the show notes. Make a donation. Maybe you can even tag it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the donation page right now. If
reach.
there's some way to say like,
Okay.
Waves listener or something like that.
I want to take CPR down.
Please do. I want you to.
Well, it's funny. We had the National Advocacy Dinner at Grand Valley just recently. And the whole reason that started, the whole reason that it came about was because the student who organized it, Riley Cooper, brought it to my attention that there is literally a scoreboard on the APTA website for schools, that the points that they have earned, things like that. And at the time, there were only 2 schools on the list. And we're like, we can get on the scoreboard. We can get to first place. It hasn't changed. It was literally competition that was like, okay, we can do it's there. PTs are nothing like.
The hard part, and I don't have all the answers on this by any means, but there are a number of very interesting rules on how you can do certain things within raising funds for political action committee within the state of Michigan. So there are some interesting caveats. So that would be a conversation for
we don't want to
Walworth,
inadvertently
who is the chair
get waves involved in a...
Do something wrong. That's right. Just know that there are some logistics there to maybe work out before doing anything. Just make sure we cover our bases.
We can just put a link in the show notes. That's probably fine.
Yeah.
That'll work. My big challenge that I've been asking more people to just consider is, I did the math on this and I haven't run it in a while. If we had, I think it was half of our, I can't remember if it was half our association or all of just our association numbers, were to spend basically a cup of coffee every month over a year's time frame and donate a cup of coffee, if you will, cost of a cup of coffee to the PAC.
Okay.
We would have I want to say $100,000, $160,000 within our political action committee. So again, many hands makes light work. If we had more people donating small amounts, that's not a big ask. It would be that significant.
Looking for where did you find the? All right.
Oh, the link.
What is it you're looking for?
I was going to look because I want to see if it says, okay, donate here. This would give you the option of, it's just whatever donation amount. So it can be just, it doesn't have to be like a $50, $100 donation.
No, you could do a recurring donation of $5 a month. Call it a subscription to Peacock.
Yeah, exactly.
Your subscription to the MPT PAC or APTA Michigan PAC.
Yeah, and if we got more people donating that way, you'd be surprised at how quick that.
$5 a month, man. Oh man, what could we do for that? Very cool. Well, Brian, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you for with us. Really appreciate.
No, thanks for having me, guys.
Hearing this perspective from not only from the private practice ownership side, but just from the leadership of APTA Michigan, to just give that there is a lot of going on, even though the surface of the water might be calm, but underneath there's a lot of activity. Cool. And just bought, Catherine, I can tell you this, bought some new wireless mics for us to try. Clip-on ones you see that people using for TikTok videos. So I'm going to bring them to House of Delegates. Maybe we can get a little
on the go.
Man on the scene. Kind of.
I'd be happy to do that. That'll work.
Fantastic.
Is it with a little microphone, the little tiny mic?
Yeah, cool. Little thing you just clip on.
But it's the one you clip on, not the actual one that's like the tiny microphone.
No.
Because those are fun.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe I could do like, who would be the delegate that would be the funniest mic up like see in the NFL sideline?
See if you can catch someone swearing or
like during the House of Delegates.
Yeah, get the behind the scenes unfiltered take.
My suspicion is it might be Mike or I.
I was gonna say Mike. Yep.
Yeah.
I know. All right, cool. I have some other names, but I'm not gonna think of them right now.
Waves is a production of APTA Michigan. It is co-hosted by Dr. Catherine Klein and me, Andy Wicks. Editing help for this episode from Chris Shoemate. Brian Gilbert is a physical therapist and partner at the Center for Physical Rehabilitation in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He is also currently serving as the president for APTA Michigan, and I approve of his hairstyle. You can find Waves online at www.aptami.org or on social media at APTAMIWaves. Drop us a line and say hi. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and may your documentation always be done on time.